I'd like to thank everyone for coming out tonight. Welcome to Dickson County and welcome to Dickson County High School. We're glad you're here to attend our first in the series of town halls. And I'd like to introduce Tennessee Department of Education Chief of Staff, Chelsea Crawford.
Hey, good afternoon, folks. I hope you can hear me on this microphone. I want to thank you all for taking some time out of your very busy afternoons to be here with us and talk about something very important. We are going to spend a little bit of time together. I want to make sure to recognize a few folks in the room, but before I do that, I want to talk about why we're here tonight, and that is because of you. We are actually here, as Mary was mentioning earlier, at the first of a series of town halls. The department is hosting 10 of these over the next month or so, and this is the very first one. We're coming to communities like this one to hear from folks about a very important topic. We know it's important to us. It will be important to you as well. So before we kind of get into things, I want to make sure to call out the most important thing for this evening, and that's that QR code that you see on the slide. There are some posters kind of stuck up on the walls around the room here tonight, and it's got the QR code on it as well. We are here to hear from you. We're here to hear from as many of you as would like to speak about a very important topic, which is related to school accountability, and that is implementation of the state's legislation to set up an A through F letter grade system for public schools in Tennessee. So really, what we want to do tonight is give you just a little bit of information about what it is that we're talking about, and then we want to hear from you. So if you would like to speak tonight and kind of chime in on what you find is important when we're thinking about measuring our students' academic success, please be sure to go ahead and use this QR code to sign up. That's how I will know that you've got something to say. We, over the course of this series of town halls and through other engagement opportunities, are going to be collecting from all folks across Tennessee input on how to calculate a letter grade system. So please take a moment before we get started to use that QR code. You can sign up at any point in time. We're going to hear from as many of you as you would like to speak, and then we will kind of conclude for the evening. So that's some of the housekeeping pieces. I want to make sure that we are able to thank our host district, Dickson County Schools. I know Director Danny Weeks was very gracious to open up this opportunity. I want to thank Principal Joe Hawley for allowing us here tonight and helping us provide this wonderful gym space. I also want to make sure to thank Mary, who introduced me just a little while ago, and for making all of this possible. You know, when I came in this afternoon, I drove past football players on the practice field. I heard the band practicing in another room in this high school. And I think it really, you know, for me, kind of centered what we're talking about here tonight. And that is our students, their success, their ability to fulfill their entire potential. One of the ways that we think about that at the state level is actually through school accountability. It's how do we measure progress of what's happening in our schools. I'll go to the next slide. Got the clicker for us. There we go. So that's the purpose. We at the Department of Education, along with all of our schools, school districts, teachers, staff, administrators, we are here to make sure every single student gets the best possible education that they can. And as I mentioned, we are here to talk about a very particular piece of legislation that is an A through F letter grade system for schools. So just like you would see on a student's report card, they'll bring home a letter grade of A, B, C, D, or F. This legislation will implement that kind of grading system for our schools. It was actually passed, if we'll go to the next slide for timeline, it was passed a little while ago. It was actually passed a number of years ago, and it has never been implemented yet. We are going to implement it this fall for the very first time. There are lots of reasons why it has not yet been implemented, and some of that with testing administration issues very near to the time that this legislation was passed. Most recently, we can think back to that little thing called COVID-19 and the pandemic that shut down our schools. There were several things that happened along the way that delayed implementation of the state legislation. Now we are ready to implement. And now we're ready to hear from you on what matters most to you from your vantage point as a parent, as a teacher, as a community member, as an elected official. What are those things that we can look at to actually measure a school's academic progress? So I'm going to put up this slide just for a little bit of frame of reference. When you think about accountability, it can seem like a very technical topic. There are some components that we think about pretty usually when we think about school accountability. Starting first and foremost with proficiency. We know in our schools, Tennesseans come together to pass academic standards for each subject and each grade level, and that's really intended to be what we expect students to learn in a particular subject in a particular grade. Proficiency shows us how our students are doing in terms of achieving, mastering, sometimes exceeding expectations on those academic standards. We also think about growth. We think about things where a school is improving and seeing their students make really great progress despite whether or not they are actually achieving that academic proficiency. It's a little bit different. We think about things like chronic absenteeism, students who have trouble coming to class for some reason and have lots of time out of the classroom, away from their teacher and away from that really high quality academic instruction. We think about other indicators. We think about student groups. English language learners, proficiency in learning the English language is an example. There are some others you see when we think about our high schools, in particular graduation rate. So these are some examples of the type of metrics that we think about when we think about accountability. Today, what we want to hear from you about is how do we measure a school's academic progress when we're thinking about developing a letter grade system for schools that's really intended to provide parents and families with clear, understandable information that is comparable across the state. What are those things that matter most? What do we, as an individual in this room or as a person that's watching on Facebook Live or however we're streaming today, what do we think matters most? So that's what we want to hear from you on. And I'm going to take this opportunity to remind you all of the QR code, because really that's what we're going to spend the rest of our time doing, is hearing your input, hearing your reactions, hearing your feedback on how we can actually go about measuring a school's academic success. So with that kind of laying of the land, I'm going to tell us a little bit about how the mechanics of the town hall component will actually go. This is where I get to be MC. And everyone who has a chance to sign up, whether you signed up in the hallway when you checked in, or if you're signing up on this QR code, you'll have about 2 minutes to come up and kind of say your piece. We've got a number of folks in the audience who have microphones available, so we'll bring you a microphone. You'll say your name. I'll start a little timer up here, and you can tell us what matters most to you when you think about measuring a school's academic success. When I start the timer, I'm going to kind of back up away from the podium. And when it gets just about time for your time to end, I'll step forward. That's kind of my visual cue for you that your time is coming to an end. But I also want to take a moment at this point in time to let you know that you can submit comment to us at any time, as much comment as you like, as many iterations as you want. You can always send that to us via email. We are accepting public comment on this particular topic through September 15th. There is an email account, schoollettergrades@tnedu.gov. So if you don't have an opportunity to speak tonight, you got to get home, cook some dinner for the kids. Yes, absolutely. The email address is schoollettergrades@tnedu.gov. Thank you for that. Want to make sure that we're providing that for all of the folks who might need some accessible communications today. So I'm going to go now to our sign-up sheet and see if there is anyone who has signed up to speak for this afternoon. Okay, and it looks like we've got a number of folks. So first up is Stephanie Stiltner. Stephanie, if you... Oh, you're right. Robert Lanham. Robert Lanham is our first one. So if we can ring a microphone. Krista is right behind you, sir, with the microphone. Following Robert, it looks like there are no other individuals who have signed up to speak tonight. So please take advantage of that QR code. Really want to make sure that we're hearing from you. And sir, Robert, if you want to go ahead and get started, I'm going to start your 2-minute timer and you're ready to go.
Yes, ma'am. I'm a high school principal in Cumberland County. This is my 6th year in the role with our school coach grades 6 through 12. And actually, we would have been, we were reward school would have been an A on the accountability model. My concern about the whole school's accountability is that we have yet to receive an accountability protocol for the year that's already passed. And so I understand having a quantitative measure and a believer in that process, but it seems a little bit unfair to me to grade a school ABCDF after the fact before the school have an opportunity to know the protocol and ensure that program training is most efficient to the protocol. And so my viewpoint is that it would be unfair at this point to assign a school grades and the school didn't have an opportunity to know that they were being graded
on with increasing. A good example would be success rates. I watched the accountability webinar, I have a very good understanding, but I'm still somewhat confused on even how they calculate my AMOs for accountability on years already passed. So I think that it would be best to hold off on that measure until we know how we're going to be scored, and then we can,
program plan the best way possible in the future to
model the accountability of recommended.
Thank you, sir, for your comments. Others who would like to speak today? This is really a listening tour to hear from you. What we would like to hear from you about is what are your top priorities for measuring a school's academic progress? I think to this gentleman's point, it's definitely something that we will be rolling out this year in terms of implementation. We recognize it's a tight timeline, but we're really here to co-create with you all, and we're interested in hearing your input and your priorities when you think about measuring a school's academic progress. Others who would like to speak? Are there others who would like to speak? I see one person here. If you wouldn't mind to just say your name before you get started, and then please have your 2 minutes. I will start your timer now.
Hi, my name's Aaliyah Guthrie, and I live in Nashville. I'm a former educator, top 20 grade.
From my perspective, the most important things in measuring academic success would include balance of achievement and growth. I think it's really important that we also have a measure for readiness after high school and
Thank you, Aaliyah. Appreciate that comment. What she was talking about is a balance between achievement and growth. And if we can go back a couple of slides, actually, and we'll put this up there, just some of those kind of prompts and the types of things that we think about in accountability, the things that could potentially be included in a calculation for A through F letter grades for schools. What you were just mentioning, ma'am, is the academics component at the top left with the little star icon, as well as growth. You also talked a little bit about readiness indicators for what happens after that student graduates. Do they go on to a career or college? Do they take particular assessments? Do they graduate? Things like that that kind of indicate their readiness for success after high school graduation. I appreciate your comments. Others who would like to speak? I know we've got some of our directors of schools and district community folks in the room. I'll invite you all to come and sign up using the QR code, or you can throw your hand in the air. We can do it classroom style too. Yes, ma'am. If you wouldn't mind to first please say your name. You go ahead.
This team. So if we look at could you tell us the ideas that you all have so far in calculation of what are we looking?
That is exactly what we're here to discuss. And I know it's difficult to kind of co-create. It's much easier to react and provide feedback to something, but we truly are in a white space here. And the reason for that is the accountability system and this A through F letter grade in particular, which is only one component of a broader accountability system, is really intended to provide families with the information they need to understand how to support education, whether that's their individual student, school community. So there are lots of things that could be included, they could be weighted, they could be equal. And that's why we're going on this town hall series, is really to hear from you all. What is it that matters? When we think about academic success at a school level, What is it that matters most? How do we think about prioritizing amongst the priorities? And it could include things like this. It could include others. And so we're really interested to hear the ideas that you all have when we kind of co-create this calculation together. Mm-hmm.
Yes, ma'am. So there are definitely components of the accountability system that apply to an individual teacher or to an individual staff person. What we're talking about today is accountability that applies to a schoolhouse community. So when you're thinking about elementary versus middle versus high school, those indicators that we co-create together as we go along this tour could look different between an elementary school, a middle school, and a high school. We're really looking for your input and feedback there. But when you think about things like chronic absenteeism in particular, I mean, I think a lot of teachers think about that as a barrier for students, obviously, when it comes to accessing high quality instruction and actually being able to learn, grasp, internalize concepts, build upon them the next day in the classroom. So that is something we've heard about in other conversations. But again, this is the first town hall, so we're in a white space. But there have definitely been previous conversations that talk about chronic absenteeism as a really critical component. There are others who believe differently. So if you have thoughts or kind of opinions on that component in particular, I would invite you to share this. Thank you. Very good. Others who would like to speak, chime in with some input. Yes, ma'am. If you would say your name, please.
My name is Robbie Faulkner, and I'm the Director of Secondary Education for Dickson County Schools. Thinking about those measures, you know, we tell our teachers again and again that they are the most important variable. That when students walk into their classroom, there are a lot of things they cannot control, but they can control that day and the learning that takes place that day. And so when we think about those metrics, we all know that achievement is everything that child has ever experienced. Some families go on these wonderful trips. They have lots of background knowledge. I'll give you a great example. I was in a school one time and the students were reading a story and they were talking about a crosswalk. And the students had no idea what a crosswalk was because they didn't live in a community that had those. So the teacher built background knowledge. So we know those things. That all of that goes into achievement. We want to be held accountable for achievement. But we know our teachers have the greatest impact on growth. And for that reason, we believe, I know as a district, the instructional folks and most of our principals believe that growth should count more than achievement. I also have to speak for my science and social studies and history teachers. Many times their growth does not count toward that overall grade, and it should. We talk about every student every day counting. Every teacher should count. And if they're going to take that test and teach those standards, which they're going to do with or without a test, their scores should count just as much as everyone else's.
Thank you, Robbie, for those comments. We're warming up here. We're getting some ideas flowing. Others who would like to speak, feel free to shoot your hand up in the air. We'll bring you a microphone. Keep checking the spreadsheet to see if anybody's signing up online. I have a feeling we're doing it in the room, so I'm going to keep looking out here and see if there are hands for others who would like to chime in and provide your input on how we go about measuring a school's academic performance. What are the things that parents and families might need to know or want to know in some of the conversations you have with your fellow kind of community members, whether that's a teacher-to-teacher conversation, maybe it's a conversation you have on the weekend? Probably not, but maybe. What are the things that you think about when it comes to measuring academic success at a school level? Chelsea, if you would flip back to that slide, I want to throw these prompts back up here for folks. Oh, there you are. You already had it. So we're thinking about measuring a school's academic success, performance at a school-based level. We've heard a little bit about some of the indicators in high school readiness. Let me think through, what does that look like in an elementary school? What does that look like for a middle school? I'm interested to know if you all have other ideas, things that you did not see on that slide that you think about when it comes to making sure your students are learning, making sure your school is successful. I see you, ma'am. Yes, here, over here in the blue shirt. We're going to bring a microphone to you. If you would. Oh, thank you. Thank you very much. Just say your name and then go ahead and get started.
Okay. I'm Casey Mahoney. I'm a parent of 2 high school students. But one thing I want to talk about was, or just mention, is the readiness for college piece. Mm-hmm. Something I've heard from other parents and friends of recent graduates is they get to college and they're like, they've never hard studied for a test, where they get into a classroom and they have 2 tests and that's their entire grade for college. And they've never had to like buckle down and study for those like big exams, and that's all they have. And so that was like eye-opening to them when they got to college. So some things for readiness is like, have we taught them how to study? Have we taught them how to, have we taught them digital skills? Have we taught them how to use, Microsoft products so they can get a job? I mean, afterwards. I know many high school grads that don't know how to use Excel. So things like that. Are we teaching them digital skills? Are we teaching them how to study, be successful? Those types of things. I think that should be in consideration with a lot of the ready for college, I guess.
That's very helpful. Thank you very much. Kate, you said, right? Katie? Casey, close. It's hard to hear you up here. Thank you very much for those comments. And I think that's something we've talked about in lots of different contexts, is kind of durable skills, soft skills, the things that sometimes you just don't get taught in an individual class, but you really got to know it when you show up at a higher education institution or on a job. Let's think about that in the elementary school space. When we think about little kids, those folks who are kind of moving out of an elementary school space into a middle school space, and we think about what makes them ready. Let's think about our middle schoolers as they move out of middle school into the high school space. I'm interested if there are any ideas that are coming to mind about students at that age. We talked about academic proficiency. We've talked about growth. We talked a lot about the high school readiness. What about elementary and middle school? And anytime anyone wants to speak, just throw your hand. I'll look. Maybe we can think about not just the indicator, but kind of prioritizing which metrics might exist in an A through F system, right? We've talked about a few. Proficiency, academic proficiency towards those grade level standards. Growth, are we improving at students' ability to learn and to absorb and to take on that academic content? Chronic absenteeism. Let's talk a little bit about prioritization between the types of indicators. And Chelsea, if you would go back one slide, and we'll put those up so everybody can kind of look at them. Interested to know if you have thoughts about prioritization, which matters more, or which should matter more, should not matter more. Input, prioritization. Do folks have thoughts? Yes, ma'am. We'll go to Ernestine over here. I remember your name.
In regard to growth, maybe being weighted more than some of the other metrics, because that is the work that's done by the teachers, and it has something to do with the zip code and the income of the parent, but mainly it would relate to the work of the teacher. So yes, I would think that. And then, I don't know, I'm still thinking about that chronic absenteeism, just wondering how much weight should be put on that for school accountability, because certainly we need to make the school inviting, but the families also have some responsibility to get the students in the door for us.
We're thinking about growth. We're thinking about chronic absenteeism. Two components we've talked about. Other opinions, other ideas. I see you, sir. We'll bring you a microphone if you would say your name, please.
I'm Robert Martin. I'm a supervisor of instruction from Humphreys County. I'd just like to echo my counterparts from Dickson County in saying that I believe that growth is a more accurate indicator of the progress the school is making. I think achievement should be part of it, but growth is probably a more accurate indication of the work that's being done in the classroom at school.
Thank you for your comments. I appreciate that. Other thoughts, other pieces of input. We're excited to hear what you think, even if it's a heck yes. If you've heard something you agree with, if you don't hear something you agree with, we're interested to hear from you. Do the thinking time like teachers do. Other ideas? We talked, I mentioned just a little while ago, kind of student subgroups. We think about age groups, as I mentioned, kind of the elementary, middle school, high school bands. We think about subgroups. One of the things that you see up here relates to English learners, students who have come and they're learning the English language actively as they're studying and trying to access that grade level content in any given subject area. I want to point that one out because that's an example of an indicator for one student group. I'm interested if there are other ideas, reactions to that one, other ideas that have come to mind. All right. What I'm going to do is a final call. We've been here for about 30 minutes. I appreciate everyone coming out. I want to make sure that you have an opportunity to provide your comment. As we go through these town halls, I think on Thursday we're in Greenville, Tennessee, all the way at the other end of the state, just about. We have a series of them in Memphis and kind of West Tennessee next week. We're in Chattanooga, Knoxville the following week. So we're going to hear from thousands and thousands of people over the next month. We're really looking for input on what matters most to you when it comes to measuring a school's academic success. Any last call for comments, input that you want to provide to us today? And while you're thinking about that, Chelsea, if you would put up the final slide that's got our email account. I mentioned that you can email us anytime, anything you think about this particular topic when we move forward to implement the A through F letter grade system this fall. We are soliciting your input. You can email us as many times as you would like. It's school letter grades at tnedu.gov. So if you haven't had a chance to provide your input tonight, or if you want to send us more thoughts as you kind of continue to think through this and really want to make sure that your voice is heard, please feel free to reach out to that email address at any point in time. All right. We're going to turn you loose. We're going to send you home for dinner. Thank you all very, very much for coming. I hope you engage with us over the next month. We'll see you soon.